throws, and it's intercepted. It's intercepted by number 22. That's Clifton. He's got the left edge. Turns on the Jets. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Up to a running back. That's Ferrante over to the right side. He comes back up the middle. He's got room. One man to beat. He turns on the Jets. There he goes. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play.
And welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk Football with Coach Val. I'm your host, Gil Valtierra, the voice of Calaveras football. This episode, we dive into a new topic, which is officiating high school football. And I could not be more excited about our guest today, who's an absolute legend in California when it comes to officiating football, Mr. Pat Morelli. So Pat, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come out and talk with us today. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Gil. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I can certainly sit here and read through a list, which is quite extensive, by the way, folks, of, all of Pat's accolades, achievement, family history. But I think our listeners would like to hear this more from you on this. Tell us about yourself and, where'd you grow up? How'd you get involved in sports? And what got you going with officiating high school football?
Sure, Gil. Yes. I grew up in Stockton, California, and we come from a long family of sports family with my father, Tony, and his brothers, Pete, Joe, and Frank. That's where it all started way back, when they were kids, and it just all transcended to myself and my cousins as well, Pete and Billy Morelli. And so we, as a kid, I went around with them as they officiated football. I was the little ball boy, started at 10 years old. So that's where I kind of got introduced to the sports of all sports, and I always wanted to play sports. And I went to high school and went to St. Mary's High School and played football, played quarterback. I tried to play, as a matter of fact. But we had a really good team. We had a great squad. At St. Mary's won 5 championships in a row. We had a good reign there with Coach Dwayne Izzetti. He built a great program there. We went from a real small school playing the big kids, and we always played up. So that was Dwayne's big thing. That he always wanted to play up. We didn't want to play at the little schools. We wanted to play up, showing that we could play with these kids.
Sure.
So it was fantastic, and just being around sports all my life with the family. It's a great thing, and and then getting into officiating. That's kind of like the next closest thing from playing a sport into officiating. You kind of trans into one another, and it's just in your blood. When it's in your blood, you kind of just follow the family gene and go with it. So I had a lot of great experience, and being around with them, it's been phenomenal.
So you mentioned Pete, and I'm a big sports fan. I've been watching football my whole life. So when I hear the name Pete Morelli and I think officials, I think the NFL.
Correct.
So
yes.
So tell me, how is Pete, the NFL official Morelli, related to you?
Pete is my cousin. Obviously, his father is my dad's brother. He was older, in which his father was a phenomenal athlete, great boxer. He turned professional, but could have went even farther than that if he'd have stuck with it. But he decided that he'd rather make money than get his head beat out all the time. So he went to work. But nonetheless, that family tree got Pete involved, and Pete started at a young age, at 19. And my cousin Bill started, I think, at 21 as well. And they started with his father, Pete, my dad, Tony, and Uncle Joe as well, Bill's dad, Joe. So therefore, that's how it all started. The family tree kind of started, and then they jumped in. I unfortunately started a little late in life. I didn't get to start in my 30s because you have to have a job that gets you able to get away on a Friday, which I didn't have until later on in life. And I wish I'd have started a lot sooner because the bug gets you, and would have, could have, should have. I could have maybe followed his footsteps, but nonetheless, I just took high school by storm and tried to make that my career.
Yeah. And that's pretty common because, I did 24 years on the sideline coaching high school football. And it's one of those things where the younger the coach you are, it's harder to get out there because you got to have a different kind of job that allows you to be out on the field at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about this as we move on. And with coaches, and I think I want to be coach first before an official. I something about that. I wanted to be a high school football coach. Something about being around the kids that really got me going, but didn't go that path. But officiating is like the next closest thing to coaching and officiating because you're around the kids. Kind of gives you the same thing. But getting back to that, with a lot of coaches became officials. They coach one sport, and then when that sport ended, they would jump in and coach another sport.
Sure.
So therefore, that was in the past. It's too bad it wasn't like that in the future because everybody's times have changed. So, but back in the day, it was city people that worked for the Parks and Rec and high school coaches all jumped in the officiating game, and it's kind of like not like that today.
Yeah.
So it's tough to find working stiffs that can get away by 2:00 on a Friday or a Thursday to go make that JV game.
Yeah, and I mean, when you really go way back in the day when I was playing, all the coaches were teachers as well, right? And then the trend was off-campus coaches, and then now you've got these off-campus coaches that, trying to find the right job to where they're able to do that. So you've got a long years of transitions of the type of people that are able to come do these types of jobs. And we're going to get into that pretty soon as far as, all of that. But where did when you were growing up, you were watching what, your dad and your uncles and your cousins participate in playing while you were playing? And
yeah, as a young kid, being around that every Friday night, that's what I look forward to every Friday night from grade school up through junior high. And I couldn't wait till Friday night comes because I knew I was going to go with my dad and my uncles and cousins to go to a game on Friday night. That was the best seat in the house, standing on the sidelines, watching the whole thing and right in front of your face.
Yeah.
So that's where I learned a lot as a youngster, being around it and picking up on it. And, it's funny, you think, oh, this is no problem. Then when I started doing it first time, I was like, well, this isn't easy as I thought it was going to be. So there is a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Right.
So anybody thinks they can do it, it's think twice. You can do it, but it's not as easy as it may seem as they make it look on TV.
Gotcha. I bet. I mean, I know from my past, interactions with referees and people seeing it on TV probably where coaches and officials are maybe getting at it. So you look at that and go, well, that can't be easy. Learning all the rules, the rule changes as they're happening. So there's, it seems like there's a lot going on there as well.
From a high school standpoint, it's relatively not as complicated as the NFL's gotten with it. They've got a rule change. Sometimes a rule change in the middle of the season. So therefore, that's a lot for those officials to all of a sudden, now you're doing one way, now you got to think about doing another. And not the public doesn't know that they maybe made a rule change unless they made it public on, ESPN or national news. So it's with high school, it's a little bit easier to grasp with rules. It's not as complicated as it is at the NFL level.
Gotcha.
Even though most people think Friday, Sunday applies to Friday night.
They do. I found that to be my experience as well. Is you get a lot of football coaches on the sidelines on Friday night that are trying to apply Sunday rules to their Friday night games. And
yes, believe me, that happens not only at the high school level, that happens at the junior college level and at the Pop Warner level. It's the same trickle down effect. That's never going to go away.
Right. Well, let's move on a little bit and let's talk a little bit about officials and logistics. I know back in the day, I knew a little bit about that website, The Arbiter. And are officials still using The Arbiter to go and book certain jobs?
Yes. Arbiter is pretty much is where you get your schedule from. And that's pretty much where you get paid through Arbiter Pay. And that's where you get your schedule from. And the assigner, he lives and die by that Arbiter. Because you use your calendar, you block your calendar out like you're doing your day job. You block your calendar out what you're going to do during the day. Well, you got to block your calendar out on what days you're free and what days you're not free, because you're going to get scheduled on a game and then pretty soon, I forgot to block that day. Now he's got to go in and reschedule and pull somebody off, and it makes it harder for that assigner to make adjustments to his day as well.
Gotcha.
So it's important to keep that calendar open. That's the Arbiter. You live and die by that, and it's a great tool versus the old days where it used to be all done by hand. Everything, like anything else, the computers made things a much more easier way to get through, because that's where you get paid. Everything goes through the Arbiter.
Sure.
So, and now the school's going to be switching gears now. The school's payment's going to come strictly through us now. We're going to now, moving forward, going into 2025 season, starting with football and volleyball, payment now will be coming through the schools directly. Kind of a flashback to when my father was doing it back in 50, 60 years ago. You got paid that night by the athletic director.
Oh.
So that was my job, to go hound down the scout down the athletic director, get the checks.
That's got to look a little fishy there, where after the game, the officials are getting some white envelopes stacked with cash, right?
Well, it was a check. It wasn't cash, so it was a check. So, but it made it a lot easier for them from their accounting standpoint, but they got away from that. And but they're kind of going back to it again.
Gotcha.
So it's just a matter on how they pay due to their payment plan. Each school district does it differently, but the onus will be on them now instead of going to the signer and then back to the signer to us. So it'll be a one,
Just
eliminate
cut out
the middleman, or correct.
Gotcha. So, some of our listeners out there might be thinking, I know from my coaching experience, with yourself, you'd come out and I'd say, oh, hey, we got Pat today. Good. We know we got a good crew here. And you'd see certain crews that kind of would have that camaraderie, like they're a team, the same guys would show up. Tell me a little bit about, how those teams are developed, how you maintain that. And then especially in this environment now, I mean, my understanding is there's a big shortage of officials, and not just for football, but for all high school sports around. There's a big shortage of officials. Maybe speak a little bit about that and then how that affects building a crew and trying to maintain that crew.
Oh, sure, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head with shortages. And it's not only there's shortages with officials, there's obviously shortages with coaches. They're trying to find, because everybody's an off-campus coach today too. So it's tough to find a coach that can break away every day at 3 o'clock and coach that team. Same difference for an individual to whatever sport he's in to make that timeline. So the shortage is becoming a big problem. And unlike it was years ago, the timeline, a game didn't start until 5:45, 6 o'clock. Now they're starting at 5. Traffic is becoming a big deal. Logistics, an individual break from work at 2:30, 2 o'clock on a Friday becomes a big problem. So the shortage is it's just everywhere, not only just in football, but in all sports. And as we get on later on, for anybody that's interested in any sport, I have our website that I can give, that I'll provide, that anybody who wants to do football, basketball, baseball, softball, whatever sport they're interested in, their website, and we can lead you to that site, to that sport, if you're interested in becoming a sports official.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, I think it's funny. It's like one of those things where, the universe is working as it should, because I knew you were coming here today. I knew we were going to be recording this podcast. And then I saw an advertisement by the CIF that was talking about for officials today. And it just kind of said, oh, that's the world aligning, because I knew Pat was coming in today.
Sure. Getting back to your crew system and get how officials come in, let me touch on that a little bit. So we do work in a crew system, and that's been in line since the beginning, since my father and his guys started. So everybody always worked in that crew system, and some of those guys worked together, all 4, because back then it was 3, then it went to 4. Now it's 5, obviously. Hopefully we can get to 7 if we can get more numbers. But the same crew would stay together 30, 40 years. So therefore, you get to know these officials on a personal basis. So no matter who was coming each week, you knew who they were. Now, since the changing of the guard, you've got a lot of those people, some retire, some unfortunately have passed on, or just can't do it anymore because father time caught up health-wise, or the job just won't allow it anymore. That's the other thing, taking away your job is more important. First things first, this is a side thing, but your main job is your job. So that there's the conflict with your day job versus this at the same time. And therefore it kind of cuts into that. But the crew system really works. So we try to work that in, try to work in that crew system, and everybody stay together. And that's helpful. Even our guys, our sister guys up in the north in Sacramento area, they kind of work in a half crew system. Some scrambles, some crews. It all depends on their numbers. So if you got the numbers, it'll work. But
ideally, you want to have a crew put together so that you guys kind of know each other, how each other works. And
it works. You work together every week, and you get that continuity going on. So therefore, naturally, you might see 3 weeks in a row where you knew somebody, and then the next 3 weeks, geez, I've never seen these individuals before, these officials. Then you're like shaking your head, well, geez, what are these guys like? And you're kind of like scratching your head.
Right.
So then that, again, it's changed because you got new people coming in, and they may not operate the flow of maybe what somebody did before them. And these individuals were a little bit different, a little more green. And so therefore coaches want to break them in.
Well, speaking of breaking in, that's a nice little segue, Pat. I appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about from my experience in 24 years on the sideline. I've had some, I'd call them horrific encounters with officials. And then I've had, great relationships with officials like you and I. Not everything will be as great as you and I. But I've had some horrific encounters where, we're face to face and we're screaming at each other, and the fingers, index fingers are pointing at each other's face, and clearly there's no social distancing going on in this interaction, and we're just kind of going at each other. And what would you say in your mind, with all your experience, what do football coaches need to do, and what do officials need to do to minimize those types of horrific interactions?
That's a great question. Football is an emotional sport, as we all know. It's combative. It's everybody takes it personal. It's not only football. You look at basketball and you look at baseball. They boo the umpire. They boo the officials on the basketball court. It's the same. It's the same thing. Unfortunately, with football, it's a little more different. It's more competitive. You got 22 bodies out there, and every coach, you got different coaches looking at different positions. So you got the line coach looking at the line, and play's going 40 yards downfield, and he's complaining about his guy got held, and the play's 40 yards the other way, and he's yelling and screaming at you, and you got the other coach yelling at you. Pretty soon you got 4 or 5 guys yelling at you. So that's everybody thinks it's the norm. It's just football, but it's changed. It's got to change, and communication is key. And personalities do clash. You've got guys, some officials that might be combative, and you got coaches want to be combative, and sometimes everybody want to get that last word, and sometimes you just got to know when to say when and put the brakes on. And sometimes you got to let a coach vent, and you let him hear what he's got to say, and okay, you made your point, and let's move on and get in and get out. So if you make him feel like he's listening to you, that'll go a long way. What probably irritates a coach is the little things that don't pertain, like I'm hounding you to, get off the field. Get off the field. And that's like, okay, I heard enough of that.
Right.
Pay attention to me. Pretty soon now we're going back and forth.
Right.
So it's a give and take situation. So
I think that the communication is huge. I think you nailed that right on the head. I remember, I'm going to bring up an old story that you were officiating this game, and it was Calaveras it was at Amador, and Amador was on the offensive side of the ball. They're fourth down, they couldn't convert, so they're lining up in a punt formation. And you'll probably remember this, but they went to punt, and this kid just completely shanks the punt. I mean, so bad. I can't even see if you can see it's off the side of his foot. It's literally like dribbling 5-7 yards down the field. Now, because of that, there's bodies everywhere blocking each other. Boom. It hits one guy. Next thing you know, it looks like a scrum to try to recover a fumble. So now both teams are jumping on the ball. By the time it's all said and done, Amador gets the ball back. It's 1st and 10, their ball. So, of course, Calaveras sidelines is up in arms. Like, what in the heck just happened? They're about to punt us the ball, and now it's their ball 1st down. What's going on? And you came over to the sideline, and I know our sideline was just, matter in a wet hand, right? But you came over nice and calm, and you went, Gil, let me explain what happened. And you explained from the moment the snap came off, what happened, how it became a live ball and created a fumble situation. Amador recovered it, and therefore they recovered a live football. Therefore, it's their ball 1st and 10. And then you said, do you understand the explanation? I went, yeah, I understand. I don't like it one bit, but I understand it completely.
I remember that play. I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember that happened. The ball was punted, and it ricocheted, and the side judge on that side, the ball, he was unsure where the ball went. He lost where the ball went. He didn't know if it went beyond the line, before the line. It was just, so we were trying to discuss on, did the ball go beyond the line? Did it not go beyond the line? Where did this all end up at? So after we discussed it, and we were going back and forth, and to this day, I still didn't know if we still got it right at the end of the day. I remember that night distinctly, because I remember Amador coach, Billy was going crazy. Your guys are going crazy. And I remember that night, and we luckily, I think we did get it right. I know you weren't happy about it, but you bring up a good point, and when you have to go give the news to a coach when it's something that he's not going to want to hear, you really got to do your best to,
explain it in detail. Here's why we're calling what we're calling. And
you got to really be calm and make them try to understand. I know they're not going to like to hear it, but you do your best, and hopefully they do understand it. And hopefully when they do see the film, it did work the way it did turn out. And therefore, because sometimes mistakes do happen.
Yeah.
And the bottom line, the biggest thing that I could say to a coach is that when the mistake did happen on the field, and say, yeah, you're right. We messed that up. We can't change it, but you're right. We messed that up.
Right.
What are you going to do? I just admitted we messed up.
Right.
Okay.
Not much you can do from
Not
there.
much you could do that, other than at least you can appreciate my honesty, I guess.
Yeah.
So hopefully that put the feather in the cap and we move on.
I think I'd much rather get a reasonable, logical explanation than the very curt, that's it, move on, and they don't want to give an explanation, and you just have to swallow that bitter pill without the explanation. That seems to be more bothersome than at least getting the explanation.
I got a good one. I'll never forget. I was a kid, and I was on the sidelines with watching my father and uncles, and this one coach kept yelling and yelling and yelling at my Uncle Joe, who was the referee, and he was really good. And this coach kept going on, and he used his last name, and he said, "You're the," can't say it, but "you're the craps."
Mm-hmm.
So after about the 10th time, my uncle said, "Is that right?" He says, "Well," he throws up his flag and says, "Well, how do I smell from here?" and dropped his flag and walked away. So that was a good one. So anyway, but communication is key. It's tough. It's an emotional sport, and you try to. It's getting to the point now where the CF is really hounded on these schools to where all we want to hear is from one coach, not the 5 assistants, not the 6 assistants.
Right.
We don't want to hear. They don't need to voice their opinion.
Right.
One guy. That's all we want to hear.
And that just calls for better communication when 2 people are talking instead of 7 guys trying to chime in.
And on a better part of the communication with technology, all officials do wear H2O radios now. So therefore, now instead of saying, "What number, who is the foul on, who's this?" Now you can get the communication right away, what number. So they can get it instantly instead of waiting. And it's always best to, if they don't know the answer, I'll get it back to you. So at least somebody's relaying that message.
Sure.
So that really helps. That helps the biggest lack of communication to better communication.
Gotcha. So Pat, tell me a little bit about, do you think training for coaches and officials is sufficient, or do you think there's still work to be done there?
That's another great question. There is a lot of work to be done there because we train our officials. As a matter of fact, we just had our first board meeting the other night, and we're already January. We're into January, so basically February we'll start into training. Going into what can we do to work on for this year, for going in 2025, what we were 2024, what we did in 2023. How can we get better? And we offer up, and we've partnered up for the last 3 years now with our friends from the North, and we try to at least do twice a year we send out invitations to all the coaches from the North and the South, anywhere to go over a session, talk about rule changes, talk about judgment calls, talk about anything to better that for better understanding. Because all the coaches do get the rule book. They get the rule book sent to them. Do they ever look at it? No. Because what do they rely on? They rely on Sunday to get their rule knowledge. And It's not the same. Some rules are, but for the most part, they're not.
Right.
And so therefore, there's where the problem gets out of whack. So the best rule that they did make the change is that a quarterback can now throw the ball away. Now he's outside the pocket and throw it away as long as it meets the line to gain. Right. So that's a good one. That really helps out the best. But they can throw it into the ground where they can't at our level, and because NFL rules are just much different. So, but it's getting better. So therefore, that's probably another good thing that's kind of helped the cause.
Sure, I'm a little biased around the training thing. I'm in, my day job was in the financial world. So when you have, your securities license, insurance license, all that stuff, training never ends. I have to have so many hours every 2 years submitted into the SEC and all this stuff. And because things are always changing, the market's always changing, products evolve, all these different things are happening. So in my eyes, hey, all the rule changes, equipment changes, all this stuff. I think coaches and officials, there should be every 2 years, get your, so many hours in to get it done.
You brought another good thing up, especially with uniforms. Uniforms are going to change this year where the numbers you can't have any slided numbers. The numbers got to be bright. It's got to be all white, all one number. You can't have numbers that you can't even hardly see. A uniform that's purple and you got gray shading lettering on the numbers. You can't tell if it's 21, 23, or 25.
You can't see it at all.
You can't tell who it is. So that goes into effect this year. So
that's great news.
That's the best thing. The hardest thing, too, with rules, especially with uniforms, all the kids want to follow what the pros do, and the college kids with the knee pads up above the knees. So we have to enforce rules because it's an NFHS rule that knee pads need to be covered. So now you become the uniform police.
Yeah.
So you send a kid out because now the coach gets mad because what'd you send him out? Well, because you said he was legally equipped. Now he's not. So now you got this tit for tat kind of thing going on. So that's kind of a big hurdle that we're fighting with when you talk about training. But training can never. There's just never enough training, and we try to do our best to reach out. We try to do league meetings at the beginning of the season to go to each league, like a TCAL or SC2A. I wish we could open up more where we could go and talk about rule changes where you get everybody in one room. And but everybody's busy. Try to get everybody in one time. It's hard.
It is.
And with Zoom, it's even better yet to get everybody coordinated. So when we offer that invitation, you get a handful of coaches that will show because they're busy doing 7-on-7 or something.
Right.
So
yeah, it's hard.
It's a work in progress.
Logistically, it's really hard.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
So it's and they rely on us to tell them when you go to first week 0, the rule changes. No, what are they? So now you got a game first week 0. You got to reinforce the new rule change.
Right.
Which lately there hasn't been hardly any rule change. It's been very, very minimal. The biggest rule change was the quarterback being able to get outside the pocket. That would be the biggest rule change in the last 2 years.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that the rule change about the jersey numbers, only because for myself, I'm starting to call games now and being up there in the booth and then going on there and there's some teams got a black jersey with a light green number on it and you can't even tell what it is. And so that's good news for me.
That makes it difficult to really see who it is. And so it's tough. And then you want to get the kids, make them look good, shirts untucked and whatnot. So,
sure.
You want to make them look good. And so, but yeah, training it's a big thing. It's just ongoing. It's because football's not an easy sport to train. You just don't. It takes a couple of years to finally for the light bulb to go on. Like I said, when I first started, I thought no problem. It's bigger than what you think it is.
Right. So I'm glad you brought up earlier NFHS. There's so many governing bodies out there. Maybe you can help understand for our listeners there the roles and those governing bodies, how they affect the football officials here in California. So we have the NFHS, National Federation of High Schools. What do they just make the rules? What is
it's a great question. NHFS sets the rules. Now you got California's got our set of rules, and each state's got their own set of rules because you got other states that follow the NC2A rules, like Texas. They follow the college book. Where California, we still NFHS. It's kind of like a 60-40 split that follow. Some associations do college and some do the NHFS. They set the rules. So then at the end of the year, every year, they always send out a survey. What rule changes would you like to see changed? So this year it was, would you like to see personal fouls become automatic first downs? I'd love to see that. Face mask, automatic first down. Any personal foul should be an automatic first down, just like it is at college, just like it is in NFL. That would take everything away because right away, first thing comes out of a coach's mouth, that's an automatic first down. Well, no.
Right.
Just like pass interference used to be automatic first down, and then they brought it back to where it's just 15 yards, and if you make the line the gain, that's a first down because they felt it was unfair. If it was offensive pass interference, they lost the down. So they tried to make the medium in between instead of it be a disadvantage for the offense to make it, it'll just be a 15-yard penalty and repeat the down.
Gotcha.
So I think moving forward, they're going to go back to automatic, any personal foul, and pass interference back to an automatic first down. And I think they want to change also, I think, defensive holding to make that an automatic first down, just like it is in NFL and college, which
Gotcha.
I think would be a big help.
Okay, so NFHS is all about the rules.
All about the rules.
CIF, California Interscholastic Federation.
They basically set the rules to the schools on basically conduct, and they set the rules to the conduct of each school. So they're the ones, the kid gets eliminated from a game or gets ejected from a game. They're the ones who decide on, they really crack down, especially it isn't just a 1-game suspension. If they feel it could be up to 3 games now, they've really cracked down on behavior. Not only with players, it's with coaches too. The tolerance is they've really stepped up the game. Because when you eject a kid and he's got to sit out the next week and it's a 15-yard penalty, it's a big thing. And you try to keep that rope as long as it can without having to become a big issue. But NFHS is the rule side. NHFS sets up what the school's buttering, what they got to follow with transfer rules and who's coming and who's going, logistics. Every 3 years they look at realignment, which I think they're really doing a good job of trying to, with parity, which hopefully that even becomes more where it's parity-wise, where you got the haves playing the haves and the have-nots playing each other, because it doesn't do any good to have the have play some team, and that doesn't do anybody good to be 50-0.
Right. Nobody
wins there. So hopefully they're going to get closer and closer to making that more with even more parity what they're doing now.
Okay. And then the NCOA, the Northern California Officials Association.
We govern ourselves, and that's basically with all sports. So we have an all sports committee that goes to the CIF officers. With the CIF officer, there's an issue with a school, an incident happened at a school with a player or an official or a parent. You come in with there and you plead your case, and they go speak. They speak to the powers that be, and they take over with there. So we kind of go hand in hand, and so therefore that makes pretty good. The CIF is they're open to anything. They've been very helpful. They got their hands full too.
Sure.
So not only with especially with transfers and this and that, and the last thing they want to deal with is ejections and all this other stuff. It's a big thing.
Well, and where we live in our area and where I coach, it's the Sac Joaquin section out of the CIF.
Right.
And that's the second largest section in the entire state, just next to the southern section.
And it's been going on since 1948.
Wow.
So it's a long time. So it's been around a long time.
Yeah, I think the last time I checked, it was 280 some odd high schools.
So when you compare North and South, the whole section together, because I think we have 90 now, I believe, in our section alone. So from logistics wise, when you think about it, from an official who may live, say per se, in Sonora, Calaveras, and he might have a game scheduled in Merced, that's a big distance.
Yeah.
You're looking at almost a 2-hour distance, almost one way.
One way.
That's a lot of ground to cover. When
to go get yelled out by some guy about
that. That's a good point. And so from an assigner standpoint, they try to do a good job of keeping people pretty much centrally located without having to travel that far. Unfortunately, if someone who lives out of an incorporated area, that person lives in kind of no man's land, so you've got to go.
You're going to go travel no matter what.
There's just not enough. There's not enough bodies up in the mountains, say per se, to cover the Sonoras and the Amadors and Argonauts of the world without seeing the same person twice or 3 times. You try to stay away from that a little bit. So that makes it kind of hard.
Right. And then that's where the arbiter comes in, right? Because the arbiter, you can say, well, I don't want to. Can you tell it, like, I don't want to travel more than a certain amount of miles?
Yeah, you can block your mileage up to whatever. You don't want to go. Just block your time so you're not available. I'm only available after 3 o'clock. From 3 o'clock, I'm on. I'm good. Or I'm not available till 4 o'clock. So especially if you're doing baseball, softball, or the other sports that start early, basketball with a JV or freshman game that may start at 3:30, 4 o'clock. That's where from an assigner standpoint, they live and die by that arbiter. So they look at the blocks, they look at the time slots. Well, geez, I know that Gil he can't go more than 50 miles, and he can't start till 3 o'clock. So I know there's this section of schools that he can go to, and that's where he'll go to.
Makes sense.
So it makes it easier from that standpoint.
Okay, so I mean that's thanks for shedding some light on that. I mean, the arbiter, NCOA, CIF, NF, they all have a very important role. And a lot of the times as coaches, we go out there and take it all for granted that, hey, we're just gonna, when the whistle blows, we're gonna kick off and go play some football. But in order for that to happen, there's a lot of moving parts underneath that make it all happen.
You'd be surprised going up 99 and you're thinking, geez, I can get there in 45 minutes, and then all of a sudden there's an accident, and now you're an hour late. So that whether a bus breaks down or we're late, it happens. So logistics-wise with traffic, it's becoming a big deal.
Yeah.
So try to get there on time it's important.
Yeah. Well, Pat, I know, when I think about, now that I've retired from coaching, I think back and I know why I started coaching. I love the game of football. I couldn't play it anymore, so that's why I started coaching. I know why I coached the game for so long, 24 years. I loved the game. I loved building all those new relationships and the camaraderie and all the people over the years, the players over the years, the families, members of the communities. So all of that I get. But now I look at someone like yourself on the officiating side. You told us why you started with the family background, all that stuff. And you've been doing it for how many years now? 30.
This will be my 36th.
Yeah. 36 years. Wow. That's amazing. What's in it for you? What keeps you going to say, I want to keep doing this?
That's a great question. It's when you've done it for a long time and you like what you do. And at the end of the day, the old theory was, I didn't do it for the money. I do it for the love of the game. And you do it because you build relationships. I mean, I've known you for now 20-something years.
Yeah.
The guy before you, I've known him 20-something years. And then the other coaches that have been around a long time, you do build up a relationship with them. And that's what it's all about. It's nice to walk on a field and say, hey, how you doing? And you're kind of like shake hands, come out fighting, so to speak, from a boxing match. But from that standpoint, you do break a nice relationship, and it's nice to walk on a field to have people know you and recognize you. That's a testament to the people that did it before me, not only my father and other ladies and gentlemen that did it even before us. And that's what it's all about. And it's camaraderie, and it keeps you close to the game that I did play, and now I kind of watch it. And from my standpoint, as a referee, you stand behind the offense, and a quarterback that you watch the game, and you're looking at it, and you're thinking, and the coach is yelling at me, "You stink," and I'm thinking, okay, I stink, but I don't know about the play calling you just did there, Coach. I don't know about that one.
Right.
But, you start thinking back in your head, so, geez, the right side's wide open. Why are they going to the left? So you just start, I think like a coach, but I officiate, but I'm thinking, so you think like, you got to think about the next play.
Right.
So as in a football official, I'm thinking, well, it's 1st and 10. Well, 9 times out of 10, they'll probably run. Well, it's 3rd and 10. Well, here comes a pass. So you got to think ahead, just like a coach is going to call his play.
Sure.
So you got to pre-plan in your mind
what possible type of play I'm going to see
happen.
Here. Yeah.
So, and that leads me to, people think it's easy because you watch on TV and you see it in slow motion. Well, a sports official, no matter what sport it is, you've got less than maybe 2 seconds to make that call. And so when you think about with football, the guy's going downfield, and then you got a penalty, and now the foul is continued on 50 yards down at the other end of the field, maybe scored a touchdown. Now you got to call the foul back. Now you got to remember what the foul was, who the numbers were on it, who did this, who did what. Now you got to retrack it all back in your mind. Meantime, you just ran 50 yards upfield. Now you got to come back and play back in your mind. Whereas at least basketball, you call a foul, boom, stop, done.
Right.
Behind the plate, strike, the play's done. First base, out. It's in or out. Take your pick.
Right.
But with football, there's a lot more to it than people really understand.
A lot more moving parts.
A lot more moving parts, and it's not as easy as people really think it is. And because football is the most popular sport, and let's face it, it's emotional, but you got to make a split decision. You got to live by that judgment, and it's all judgment. It's not personal; it's judgment.
It is. Speaking of that, I know we're almost running out of time here, but I'm going to ask you this just because it came to my mind when you talk about all of the different things in your mind. What do you think about the now with the whole instant replay that's come in with the college and the pro game, and when with an official and what they have to do when they see it real time with these Division I professional, incredible speed, incredible jumping ability, all this great athletic ability, you see it as an official in real time, and then now all of a sudden it's getting dissected in video, and then just seeing whether or not your call is righteous or not. What do you think about all that?
Boy, that's a whole different. That's a whole other episode. But at the end of the day, short kind of instant replay, it's great. But from the viewer standpoint and the announcers in the booth, it's easy for them to say, "Geez, look at that crew missed that call. They this, they that." Geez, when they slow it down into frame by frame by frame, well, yeah, you got the human eye of you, just like I just said. You've only had maybe 2 seconds to make that call. So instant replay is great for out of bounds play, was a foot in, out, this, that. Did the ground cause the fumble? I get all that. Now they want to go back to instant replay and regarding, was it roughing the passer, not roughing the passer? They want to even get into it. Pass interference, not pass interference.
Or how about even intent? Did he intend to really?
It's, it's gone to a whole nother level. Football is just because a big thing, and a lot of money's bet on football. Well, that's a whole nother topic for that. But one topic we didn't talk about is safety of the sport. And football, it's a violent sport, and safety is real. It's top of mind. It's top of everybody's mind, especially at the high school level.
You bet.
And usually a kid usually gets now ejected from the game. It used to be for fighting, but now if it meets the criteria of these things of hitting a defensive player with the crown of the helmet, meaning did he not need to do that, he or she? So therefore, and in my mind, did he meet all that criteria? Therefore, he met that criteria, and unfortunately, that kid's been removed from the game. Now you got to go explain it to the coach. Now it's a star player, boys. He's hot because he doesn't see it that way. But it's the safety, and remember, safety comes first. At the end of the day, it's all about safety, and that's been the hard part of, especially with the crown of the helmet and the defensive change and offensive change, and the rule just coming into play now, maybe 5 years from now with hitting with the lower of the helmet, because it never was into play. Where 5 years ago that was a legal play, and now it's not. it's hard to grasp that.
Right.
It's like, how do you tell a car to stop at 80 miles an hour on a dime? So it makes it tough. So, and then touching on another standpoint, it's usually hitting a defensive player like 15 yards away from the play.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's just why.
Yeah, there was no need. It wasn't going to impact the play.
Exactly. So, that's where coaching really can come into play with communication is just shadow the kid down. Just shadow him.
Yeah.
Follow him. You don't need to hit him.
Right.
Just follow him. So, but safety it's top of mind. It's a big deal. Just the other day, we're talking about safety where that one, I think, congressman, he wanted to try to
in California?
Yeah. with youth football, ban it from 8 to 12 years old.
Right.
And obviously, we won't get into the politics, but safety, I do get it. I think just at lower levels, I really believe flag football really can be a better choice at 8 years old than tackle football. That's just me, just from a safety standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really understand the game at 8 years old.
Right.
But it's fun to watch. It's cute. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But from a safety standpoint, I think it's best at from 12 years old up to that junior high level.
I felt the same way until I started digging into the stats, and you got to go and listen to the podcast. We have it one live now that was all just on youth football and Pop Warner football, and the stats were surprisingly low to where I felt like the fear of that concern was outweighing the actual statistics that were showing.
And when I played and when you played, it's been 48 years since I played high school football, and it changed even dramatically, completely different from when it was even before that. But the equipment's even a lot better. The helmets are a lot better. These helmets are almost $1,000 a pop.
Yeah.
The equipment's way better. It's safe. Just that you can't think that helmet is going to save you from, something's going to happen. It just, when you're standing still, it's going to happen. And, when you lower that head and you're coming in real fast and that collision, somebody unfortunately is going to, it's not going to end well.
Right.
However, I did believe, I don't know if the stats are still the same though, from a concussion standpoint, soccer still leads the way, I believe, with concussions versus football. I don't know if that stat is still the same, but
it's up there along with skateboarding, cycling, all of that stuff.
Right.
Bike accidents.
Right. So, and to that point, it's safety again. They've got the equipment is so much better, way better complete. When you and I played, it's
yes,
way
definitely
better. The quarterback didn't have any of the rib pads or any of that stuff that in my day, he didn't have any of that.
Right.
So I wish I'd have had that. You're standing still and some guy comes in and hits you like a light pole and you go down, and
yeah, it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt. So, but from a parent standpoint, I do get it. I get it.
Sure.
But it's a phenomenal sport, whether you like or safety thing or not. It's a great sport. 100%.
You bet. So moving along, earlier you had mentioned about if there's someone out there listening now, say, hey, I wouldn't mind trying to be an official for football or be an official for softball, whatever it may be. We know they're low on officials. Where could they go to find out more information about that, Pat?
I'm glad you brought that up. And not only in California, it's a USA phenomenon with a lack of officials. It's everywhere in all sports, not just football. It's in all sports. And however, I got to say too, though, the CIF with the school, the pay has gotten a lot better. They recognize the fact that they need to up the ante, and all sports are finally now getting a little more bump in pay. So now at least you're getting a little more compensation.
Oh, good.
So that's been a big help. So if anybody's interested, no matter what sport, it's not only football, you can go to our website, which is www.ncoafbsouth.org. So if anybody, you could go right to our sport. There's a form that you could fill out. But if you're interested in any sport, no matter what sport, girls and guys, whatever sport that you played in, you might be interested in that sport, try it. A parent, if your kid's done playing, come try it. Basically, our best recruiting has been basically coaches. Okay. We've gotten a lot of coaches to switch over, believe it or not.
That is kind of an interesting dynamic to go on the other side there.
And my sales pitch is, I make the same amount of money once a week where you're out here 5 days a week. Think about it. The wheels start spinning. So a lot of officials that have come over have been coaches that decided to get out of the coaching game and get in the officiating game. It's been a great transition.
And it keeps them around the game.
And it keeps them in the game. And they'll have to do it once a week versus every day.
There you go.
And don't get yelled at. Well, now they know what it's like to get yelled at by the parents, so it's a win-win.
Well, we're about out of time, Pat. Any parting words for the folks out there before we get going?
No, I thank you, Gil. I think this is great that you're doing this, and keep doing what you're doing. high school sports, it's phenomenal. It's great activity, no matter what sport it is. It's great to be around, and high school sports, it's what it's all about. And the more you get involved, it's a great thing. And I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you having me. And keep doing what you're doing, and look forward to seeing you down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And maybe you had mentioned earlier, your cousin there, ex-NFL official. Maybe we'll do an episode where we can all get together. We'll do family and football episode or something.
Pete would love to do that. He's got great stories, better stories than I do, at least from an NFL standpoint. He can kind of give you some ins and outs on, it's like he says, no matter what, it's the same sport. It's just a little higher level, but you kick off the same way, you tackle the same way. Only difference is you got 80,000 in fans versus maybe 100.
A little bit different.
A little bit different, but he says it's the sport is still the same. And you get yelled at the same way. He said.
That's great. Well, folks, I want to thank you all out there for listening and the overwhelming support from the community we've been receiving around this podcast. Of course, thanks to our guest, Mr. Pat Morelli, for taking a time out of his busy schedule to be here. Remember, if you have any questions you'd like us to address or have any comments that you'd like for us to air in a future episode, follow us on Instagram at the Let's Talk Football with Coach Val on Instagram, or you can shoot us an email at gilbertvaltierra@gmail.com. Until next time, we are out.
And it's intercepted. It's intercepted by number 22. That's Clifton. He's got the left edge. Turns on the Jets. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Up to a running back. That's Ferrante over to the right side. He comes back up the middle. He's got room. One man to beat. He turns on the Jets. There he goes. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play.